Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Daily EQ Show. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. You know, here at EQ for All, we teach people and help people to develop their emotional intelligence. But a lot of people still don't understand what emotional intelligence is. They often think it's a concept, it's an idea, it's just a way of thinking. But we have developed a process that helps people to become emotionally intelligent step by step. So today's show is very special, very different. It's going to be quite vulnerable and interesting because on today's show, I have my two children, Kaylee and Dustin. Now, I've asked them to join me today because I thought it would be really interesting for you to see the contrast between having a parent who was not emotionally intelligent, what it felt like for them, in their own words, from their own perspective and from their own experience, and then obviously what it is like today having a parent who is now emotionally intelligent. So welcome to the show, Kaylee and Dustin.
Hello.
So I know this is going to be really different for you, and so thank you for doing this. I know this might be a little bit weird. It might be a little bit interesting because it depends on how much you remember and from your perspective. So I'm trying to think back to, so obviously in 2003 when I was introduced to emotional intelligence. So how old were you both then in 2003?
I was 15.
Yeah, I was 17.
15 and 17. So yeah, so you both now what, 32, Dustin, you'll be 35 this year.
36
Yeah,
this year.
36.
yeah, so 36. Oh my gosh, when did that happen? Okay, so you were both teenagers, and I remember before I went into, or I already possibly had been introduced to emotional intelligence, I can't remember, but I remember learning about personalities and temperaments, and then teaching you guys about it. But tell me a little bit about some memories that you possibly have of what it was like having me as a mom who was not emotionally intelligent. So what do you remember before 2003?
Stressed mother.
So
Yeah, I
Dustin, do
think,
you want to start and then Kaylee can go afterwards?
yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I think I remember a stressed, fast-paced, impatient
No hold
mother.
hard. You can say it.
Yeah,
Say it as it is. Don't feel worried that I'm going to be offended. Say what comes to mind.
I know, but I think that's the kind of, if I had to think back and I think of moments or memories or experiences and that kind of, I think the stressed one was, yeah, which was probably impacts in multiple ways, frustration and anger and sense of what nonsense we catch on. But yeah, I think the stressed one, stress pretty much is how I remember mom back then. Because it was always looking for, always hustling, and I guess so
Yeah.
Always hustling as in trying to make money.
yeah, always trying to make sure that we got food on the table and that. And so I think that's what kind of caused a lot of the stress, and with that stress then it just kind of boils over and yeah, but yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
And you, Kaylee?
I remember feeling like we were walking on eggshells a lot because of the stress and because of you never really knew what every day was. Yeah. So some days you'd be like, okay, what's going to happen today? Like, is mom going to be super stressed today? So what do we do? Like,
we avoid,
like be on extra special good behavior so that we don't cause any more stress. I remember thinking like that and having to kind of watch what we said a lot in case it tipped over the edge and
Triggered.
Triggered is a good word. The situation or just the day. Yeah, so like stressed. Stress is pretty much a good overall
Sum up.
yes.
But how did that, so when you said, you walk on eggshells, how did that make you feel? Did it at any stage make you feel unsafe, or that you weren't able to be yourselves? So if you kind of broke it down, how did it feel being around me? How did it feel in our home?
Well, I think Kelly and myself would maybe have a different experience on that, but yeah, I think it's more you're walking on eggshells because you're too scared to say something that might make you angry, or you might do something that might make you angry. And sometimes it was, if I look back now, and I think if you had to look back now, it's almost like it was things that, why did I get angry about it? It had more of an impact in a sense of, because you don't want to do it again, because you saw the reaction previously. And then you don't do it again, but it's almost like it's an action that didn't kind of negate the response it got. So, and in a way, you're not really able to be yourself. And it's kind of, you're too scared to say something that is yourself, or do something that is yourself, because you're not sure of the implications thereof. I'm not saying it's like I wasn't scared at any point. I didn't. I think it was just, we also understood to a point. Because I think, we kind of knew our environment. We knew that it's mom's stressed, mom's looking for ways to make sure. And that's why I said I don't think there was any fear anywhere.
There wasn't ever fear of like safety. I don't think. Like I never felt unsafe. And I don't think Dustin ever felt unsafe. It was just how quickly the atmosphere could change and not knowing, because one day you could say something and the next day you could say exactly the same thing and it had a different response.
Yeah.
Because of the day that it had been. So like, I remember once I was trying to be funny in the car. I said something after church. And it was when we went to church. You could cut that out, sorry. When we went to church, and I remember saying, like, trying to be funny about something, and the reaction being intense, and then kind of going home, and just the whole day was kind of like a write-off.
Yeah.
Because then you were upset, I was upset, Dustin was staying out of the way. So it was very much, whereas a week before I could probably have said exactly the same thing, being funny, and the reaction would have been different. So I think that's like the eggshells thing. I never really knew, and like what Dustin was saying, you never really knew what you could say and couldn't say in certain situations. But I think it also taught us to read the room a lot.
Yeah, I think it was amazing. It did. I think in a lot of ways it did teach us how to read a room.
Yes.
It's been a great skill nowadays.
Such a good skill nowadays.
Such a good skill.
I can reduce conflict very quickly in any room.
And I think it just shows the evidence of so much how your emotions are energy, because it infects the entire environment. Where we always say to people, walk into a room, you can feel when somebody's in a mood, somebody's stressed out, somebody's upset, somebody's angry. They don't have to open their mouth. You don't even have to look at their face. It just affects the energy and the environment that you're in. So it's almost like, palatable. It's just there. You can't help that.
It's like the atmosphere, definitely. And but that did kind of change, because if I had to think about in my later teenage years, what was left of it, we were allowed to say more and be more ourselves. And that's why I was smiling down up on my hectic. There was quite a shift. With like you didn't really say much to a point where we could just be ourselves. We could swear but also read the room. We could just be ourselves, and I think that's definitely one of the more notable changes that for me was during that transition of when you got that first book and understanding people, and that is that we were allowed to be ourselves more, which I think it just kind of it opened up so much more then as well.
Yeah,
I think that's when we started getting a lot more honest as well and things like that.
Yeah, I think because up until then, I have to think back to before I got that first book about personalities and understanding the differences between, you know, different people, different children, different needs, things like that. I mean, my own memories of before I was introduced to emotional intelligence and the brain and the mind and all of that stuff, excuse me, was very much about being that stressed up mother, confused, not being able to sleep, lying in the bed going, why is this one child doing that and the other child is doing that? And I don't understand this. Surely they're supposed to understand.
People say.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you know, you have one child, you get to know them, and then the next one, and then it's not like that because you don't understand the different responses. And I clearly remember that day of getting that book and picking up that book and going, what? Different children? They have different needs? How does this work? And then obviously being so excited because it felt like to me that like I'd found a solution, because I think there was nothing worse for me as a parent, not knowing how to make enough money, not knowing how to protect you, not knowing how to keep you safe, not knowing. It's always the not knowing that kind of keeps you stressed out.
Which kind of it like comes with the territory of being a parent. But you could not have got two more different children between Dustin and me. So like having that knowledge that, okay, well, how to communicate with Dustin and how to communicate with Katie, like that is a how to that you were able to actually answer and do.
Yeah, and I think a big one was also the how to express love differently. Because we experience love differently and how we experience
I like stuff.
Yeah, you like stuff. I like stuff being done. So yeah, and I think, and that was also one of the big things that I remember is when you had kind of also discovered that that there's actually different ways and different languages that you need to actually talk in order to show, because I think at points we would always say it was a thing of fairness and that, but I don't necessarily think it was a thing of fairness. I think it's that we never both fairly felt the same. And you can never really make kids fairly feel the same if they experience things differently. So that's why I think the love language one is definitely one I remember, because that was where I think a lot of things changed. How Kaylee experienced love, how I do, and then how we opened up because of that. So it's just that understanding, and as you learned how to understand us a bit better, we were able to be more ourselves. Which
helped us understand each other better as well. Like that was a big thing. Like when you learned about Dustin, you kind of almost taught me about him, and like vice versa. Like
no, definitely.
So it was quite nice to learn, because I knew what made him. I knew his triggers.
My buttons.
But your buttons. But that like connection, I think definitely came after we kind of learned from it as well, because we definitely got closer when we understood each other a bit better.
And did it teach you a bit more about me? About yourselves and each other? Did it help you to understand me more? Or
no, definitely. But I think it almost opened up that gate of understanding, because like if you constantly got this ball of stress in front of you, you're not going to get anywhere with it. You're not going to get through it. So as that kind of opens and deteriorates, then you start to get to know the softer side,
Yes.
and not necessarily the harder side.
Mm.
And that's where, yeah, it was definitely getting to know more the softer side. And hectic mom's actually quite cool. Like, so yeah, there were a lot of, and I think it's now thinking back, you don't really think about it during your day to day, but if it's sitting here and you're like hectic, it's quite a, there's moments you can actually find the opposites to, and remember. So like, it was like this, it's no longer like that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also with you, because you were so stressed all the time, like Justin said, that whole ball, your personality doesn't shine through when you're stressed, because all it is all you see is like stress when you look at someone. So you don't actually know anything about them to a certain degree. Like, we knew you were our mom and that you loved us and we loved you, but I don't think we knew you for a very long time, because, like Dustin said earlier, like the hustling, you were always busy. So it was very hard to kind of have that connection, even though we had the parent-children connection, and I think we had a really strong one, like to be able to, excuse me, and get to know you, your softer side, like Dust said, that was really cool. That was really helpful when you kind of put the ball of stress down for a bit, and then we could learn about you and interact with you and kind of have those conversations, because we could also then be ourselves and be open and honest and have any conversation that we wanted to. Whereas before, maybe we wouldn't have asked all the questions that we did.
I mean, I can remember when I wanted to do better. I wanted to do better with you guys and raise you differently, because I was very aware of a lot of the ways I was raised. I wanted to have a different experience. I wanted you guys to have a different experience. And I remember, we as kids were raised with spankings and hidings and punishments and shouting, and I couldn't stand it. And I felt like I was walking on eggshells the whole time at home. I really did. I felt like, getting into trouble. I was scared. I was scared to say what I wanted, but at the same time, I would sometimes say it, but then sometimes you got punished, sometimes. So you never really quite knew. But I remember when I became aware of wanting to do things differently, when I was engaged to some guy at the stage, Dustin, and I didn't understand you were very hyperactive, very sensitive. Now that I know where that was coming from, but I do remember you were acting out, and he took you to this bathroom in the mall, and he gave you a hiding, and you came out, and I was mortified. I mean, it's taken me years to get over that guilt, but realizing that, what on earth, why did I just, first of all, I don't like hidings, I don't like spankings, I don't think it's any good. But realizing that, why would I let somebody else do that to you? Because even at that stage, I can't remember if you guys were getting spankings at school. I think you did, because I remember intervening in that as well one day. I remember you coming home and and one of your teachers were going to hit you or something, or they were threatening you.
They'd hit me on the back or something like that.
Yeah.
It was, hectic. I can actually remember that. It was in primary school in Joburg.
Yeah.
And it was part of we were doing a play or something, and the teacher had hit me during the play. Yeah. And then you went crazy.
I went crazy. And I said, the next time a teacher tries to hit you, you stop them and say, my mother says you do not have permission to hit me. You have to go. Because I was furious. But what I'm saying is that, up until that moment, I had realized that even though I didn't want to do what my parents had done, which they only did with what they had been taught, I realized that I was perpetuating that cycle, because you don't realize. And then obviously when you said about the shouting, and you said, please don't shout at me, even that was something I couldn't stand, being shouted at, because it made me feel so insecure and unsafe, and unsafe at home. You didn't feel comfortable at home all the time, because you didn't know how your parent was going to react.
Yes. Yeah, no, I don't really remember the spanking, but I think that shouting and that shouting, unfortunately, is kind of something that we inherit, or I inherited. Kelly
Yeah.
also. And gone through that same experience. But I think, yeah, with Darian being 6, he was able to let me know that look, I know you're angry, but please don't shout at me.
At 6 years
Because
old, that's hectic, eh?
at 6 years old, and for
Wow.
him to say that it really is it really was kind of an eye opener and almost a memory back to when I was a kid and shouted at for everything.
Yeah.
So you don't want to repeat the cycle.
No.
And in doing so, it makes you think. It makes you, because you kind of see the shouting, they shut down.
Yeah.
It has absolutely no benefit.
Yeah.
Same as where a spanking for me, they would just shut down. You're not able to have a conversation or a discussion or kind of help them through a process when they're in that state or shut down. So it's kind of, you got to recalibrate and think of better ways to deal with the situation instead of shouting. So yeah, but the spank, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing that I don't remember it. I think it might say, some psychologists might say it's a bad thing.
It only happened that once. Thank goodness. Oh.
But I think it's no, but I think, but that also says something, because for it to cause a scar or to be locked away or something, it had an emotional impact. And a lot of the time you lock away those things, or you tend to lock away a lot of things that had those kind of impacts in your life growing up.
Yeah.
Because you don't really want to revisit it, and your brain has taken this defensive action to kind of, look, you went through that then, I'm never going to let you go through it again, type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but it's like the naughty step and stuff as well, because I remember, Kaylee, when you had Tyler, I mean, you were very good with tantrums and dealing with tantrums, because I only understood tantrums the way everybody else spoke about it. You know, it was the whole thing about terrible 2s, terrible 3s. But you were the one that educated me, because my training was from understanding a child from the age of 4 and upwards, but I didn't understand the whole aspect of under 4 years old. And that's something you taught me. So explain a little bit about that and how you changed that with your children in terms of tantrums and naughty steps. And because even that is shutting a child down, isn't it? When you send them to a naughty corner or a naughty step.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. If you send a kid to the naughty corner because they've had a tantrum, first off, you're basically telling them that what they're feeling is completely bad and irrelevant, and they don't even understand what they're feeling. So you're putting them in a corner going, think about what you're doing. And they're like, what am I thinking about? Like, I'm just going to sit here and get bored. And because they don't understand. So like we went on a course that was basically emotional intelligence for toddlers. And that revolutionized our terrible 2s, because Tyler would have these really big tantrums and everyone goes, oh, just leave them, just walk away, leave him to deal with it. And so we did that, and it didn't do anything. So when we went on this course, they were like, well, that's stupid, because you're not actually helping your kid. So the one thing that we started doing was sitting with him and identifying his emotion. So being like, right, okay, I can see that you're angry, which is so great, because the first time we did it, he almost looked at us and he was like, okay, cool, so that's what I'm feeling. Like identifying that emotion and teaching him about it and being like, this is what anger feels like. Like, it's okay to feel angry. It's not okay to hit, because obviously sometimes tantrums become violent. But helping them to process that and go, okay, cool. Or I know that you're frustrated because I didn't buy the toy, but next time maybe we'll look at buying it. Or it was really cool, like I'm just like exploring that with him, because then by the time he was 3, well, actually his tantrums pretty much stopped almost immediately. And
just
then
by
by
you
the time
showing him that you understood, or by helping him to understand.
And just like being there, being like, okay, I know you're angry. This is what anger feels like. If you want to hug, we can hug. If you just want to sit, we can sit. Like helping him process what he was feeling.
Yeah.
Allowed him to feel it and understand it and move forward.
Mm.
And then by the time he was 3, he would come up to us and be like, Mom, I'm feeling angry, or Mom, I'm feeling frustrated, or Mom, that makes me feel sad, which was awesome. And he still does it now, obviously, but you know, he also has learned how to deal with it himself, because he's like, cool, this is how I feel, and this is what's going to happen after. Almost like self-soothing, like I'm angry and I just need to chill out and it'll be fine. So,
and I remember one incident that because I looked after Tyler a couple of times a week when Kaylee went back to uni to do her degree, and he must have been about 2, and I'd started from 8 months already, you know, practicing emotional intelligence with him as well, with flashcards and things, trying things out that I'd never had the opportunity to do with my own kids, because obviously only going into this field when they were teenagers. But I remember him the one day throwing a huge tantrum about not giving him a bacon sarnie. He wanted bacon and the bacon was off, and he looked at me and he went, I hate you, Grammy. And I just said to him, that's okay. It's okay if you hate me. And he went, really? And I went, yeah, really, because that is what you feel like right now. I love you, but I understand you hate me right now, and that's okay. And just that penny drop moment where he went, wow, it's okay for me to feel this strong emotion. And within 2 minutes later, he ran up to me, threw his arms around me and looked up and went, I love you, Grammy. And it was over. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how amazing is this? Because possibly with my own son, I would have said to him, no, you can't tell me you hate me. That's wrong. That's
you're not allowed.
Hate's the wrong word. Hate's is strong. You're not allowed to use the word hate.
It's just so incredible.
Hate was a swear word back then.
Yeah, it was, because it was almost like you were being disrespectful to a parent by having emotions and expressing them. It was about you were disrespecting them, and it's not like
embarrassing them.
Yeah.
Like that's such a big thing that you see all over social media. Oh my God, my kid embarrassed me today by throwing a tantrum in the shop. And you're like, your kid was pissed off. It's okay. Like,
not about
other people. Yeah. And it's not about anyone around you. Your kid's like really angry at the moment. Like, instead of scolding them for embarrassing you, like, see if they're okay. Like, check that they're cool. Like, have their back.
Because what do you think are the biggest, because I know we're coming to the end of our time, but what do you think is the biggest changes? Because you've already said, okay, it gave you permission to be yourselves, to express, because I think from that moment on, Kaylee, you said you were 15, Dustin was 17. I really felt like we almost then grew up together, because I'm only 17 years older than my son. So I was like a really young mom, and sometimes you see photos of us when we were younger and we look like brother and sister, because I mean I was just a kid. But I almost feel like from that moment on we grew up together, and then suddenly we became closer, we started laughing, we had more fun. It was, I mean, I can see the incredible contrast, but what were those moments that stood out for you then when I became a different person and allowed myself to be myself, but also allowed you to be yourselves?
Well, like if I have to, I think it's a huge contrast, but it's weird like looking at it now, and you almost, it's not that you don't remember how bad, or not how bad, how difficult how it was.
Yeah.
It's but yes, I think 100% where when that kind of switch happened, it was more, it wasn't necessarily, it didn't become this mother child relationship. It wasn't, because if I do remember, I remember the one saying we used to probably hear a lot, or I remember hearing a lot, is that I'm your mother, not your friend.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
I'll give you something to cry about. No.
But yeah, so and that kind of, that's I think where it changed. is that it went from I'm not a saying of I'm your mother, not your friend, to I'm your mother and your friend.
Yeah.
Because it was, we could then be more honest. I think Kaylee could come and I would leave the room because it's not my kind of conversation, but it opened up a lot more paths of communication. Because we had this different or a new sense of being comfortable with how we are and what we say. And knowing that the response isn't going to be one of anger or frustration, it's going to be more one of construction. If it was criticism, it was constructive criticism, or if it was someone just to be there. I think it was to listen, to go through that, to have the empathy and kind of help steer you. So definitely, for me, it became more of a mom-friend relationship than that I'm your mother, not your friend relationship.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people, because we were always, raised with that whole thing, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother, or I'm your father. And a lot of people, I mean, I can remember a lot of people saying you're not supposed to be friends with your children. And that to me is the biggest nonsense lie ever, because as you say, when you look at your child with the same respect that you would to your partner, to anybody else, it's all about that mutual respect, that you're just a younger version, but it's that respect and seeing that they're going through the same troubles you went through as a young person. So instead of looking down on somebody, it's being equal. It's all about equality, and just because that for me was revolutionary, because I remember even some of my friends saying, what, your kids phone you about sex issues and help and advice? And I'm like, yeah, we talk about anything and everything, because who else is going to help them? And
yeah, who else do they talk to about those things?
Exactly.
You ask your mom what this word says, it's the same thing. It's like,
yeah,
did that happen? Is that okay?
Yeah, and I remember somebody saying to you, Kaylee, I can't believe you and your mom are so close. I don't want to be friends with my mom. And you would be like, but why wouldn't you want to be friends with your mom? And I think that's such a great way of looking at it. And I heard somebody else say the other day that we forget that we're raising adults. So if we are treating children to be beneath us, and disrespecting them and being abusive and shutting them down and shutting their nervous system down and shutting their personality down and making it all about academics and this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. What sort of adults are you going to raise? And I mean, I know for a fact that I am incredibly inspired, proud, amazed, in awe of the adults that the two of you are, in spite of the rough beginning we had.
But it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
So I mean, Kaylee, what would you add to that in saying that how different life is for you today because of emotional intelligence?
I think it's very different. I think it's, and I think it's one of those things that you never stop learning about. It's I'm so different with Mia than I was with Tyler. And even with him, I was fairly aware. But just having that understanding, like she is an absolute firecracker. She's a complete opposite to Tyler, but having the knowledge and the understanding that it's okay that they're different and it's raising them the way that they both need to be raised.
Yeah.
And just, emotion, if the way Mia is, I think if I was very unaware, I'd probably be putting her down a lot. Like, don't do that, because she is nuts. Like,
she's spirited.
Free-spirited.
Yeah.
I know.
But just kind of giving her the freedom to be herself. And I mean, sometimes it's hard. I still shout at them sometimes and then think, oh God, I shouldn't have done that because it doesn't do anything. But just having the understanding to then, even if I do shout at them, talk to them and go, that sucked. I'm sorry I shouted. Like, I was angry. It's not a cool way to handle it, but it happened. And, I'm sorry if it made you Like even Tyler will turn around and be like, Mum, I know you were just frustrated at school. I haven't taken it to heart, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel very grateful that I can raise my kids with that knowledge. You know, we're not all perfect. We all do make mistakes, and there are times where you fall at the hurdle. But like you said, Dustin, that's how you finish. And, you know, I think it's definitely made my parenting different. I get complimented on my kids all the time. And I think it is because they're awesome. But because they are able to be themselves.
Yeah.
And me having the understanding and having a partner with the understanding is really helpful. Because, I think other parents who don't know, they might reprimand someone like me a lot. And it would break her little spirit, and she wouldn't grow up to be the adult that I'm raising. That I'm
going to be a leader one day. She's strong.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's her personality.
Well, that's it. I've said it. She'll either be leader of a gang in prison or the leader, like the president of somewhere. You know,
The gang in prison.
No, but she will lead anywhere. Anywhere she likes, she's gonna be a leader. So
she leads all her cousins and everybody else, and
everyone. So I do feel very grateful that I'm able to understand her and raise her and Tyler in a way that, you know, emotionally intelligent and that they're aware.
Yeah. So before you go, if you are, so two things. If there's a young person that's listening to this interview right now, what would you say to them? And if there's a parent who is listening right now who maybe needs to hear from somebody who was in a household that, you know, wasn't initially emotionally intelligent, what would you say to them? And I'd love to hear that from both of you before we end, so we can just pass that message on.
Wait, what was the first
Do you want
question?
me to go first?
You go first this time. Yeah, that's cool.
A parent, I think the biggest thing is not putting your kid in a box. Like there is no comparison. You can't compare your kid to other kids. You need to really understand them, the way they emotionally need you, the way they mentally need you. Like some kids don't like hugs, some kids thrive off of hugs, but understanding that they don't all fit in a box. You know, when the parental wars that go on anyway, like my kid's great at this, my kid's great at this. Like you need to understand your child. Your child is different to every other child, and understanding them and knowing what you need to do for your kid or different children is a game changer. I think it's life altering. It's Dustin and I were so different growing up. And if we were put in the same box, it sucked because we were like very, very different. He wouldn't tick my boxes, I wouldn't tick his. So being able to be ourselves and having someone understand that is massive, because you need to be able to go to your parent. Like you're there to parent them, but you're also there to comfort them and, you know, raise them.
Guide them,
Guide them. But a young kid. What, like a teenager?
Any
like
child that's listening, teenager.
Understanding yourself. Understanding yourself, knowing, you know, even if you are in a household where I've got a friend who was in a household with very, very, very strict parents and very unaware parents. And he grew up and he read books so that he could actually understand what his parents didn't understand, and made himself very aware of everything. So he kind of took himself away from that situation and bettered himself. So you don't always have to fit in where your parents tell you to fit in if they don't know what, you know, what's going on. You can step out of that box and be yourself, you know, even if it's when you are a teenager and you start reading books, or when you become an adult and you have that freedom to do that. I think it's very important to understand everything else rather than just what you know and what you've been taught. like to explore what else is going on with yourself or with people around you. Human behavior is really important.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. Thank you. And you, Dusty?
For the
Hard
parents,
act to follow.
pretty much. I don't know. I think the one thing that's kind of worked for me is to find the relatable things, because at the end of the day, my son is a lot like me, or is a lot like his mother. He's a lot like both of us in many different ways. But the things I really appreciate are those things that you can almost relate to, in the way that he kicks a soccer ball, or in his interest in hockey, and he's never watched his dad play hockey. And those relatable moments are really what kind of help you see your child for a child, and not necessarily someone that you go, why would you want to fight yourself? Why would you want to stop yourself from being the person they want to be, or being the person that you could help them be? Because at the end of the day, it's half yours. So that, for me, it's finding those relatable things that really makes you appreciate your child in those moments, and helping you see him for him. It's funny. I love finding the relatable things, and it really has it's helped me appreciate him a lot more, and how we communicate. Because of these things that we relate to so much, we're able to communicate at a different level. And him and his mom relate on a different level to a lot of other things. And they communicate about other things. So it's also finding that balance sometimes. But I think look for the relatable moments. They really do make you smile, and able to communicate and understand your child a bit better, because at the end of the day, it is you.
Yours is definitely you.
For the kid, I think if the one thing that maybe I would have liked to have done as a child is to be able to kind of be myself a bit more, and not really let my mom or my parent kind of weigh that down on me. Because if I'm almost kind of, if I wish I had the strength to communicate, can I say, or to say that, but this is me. Why do we want to? Why do you want to stop me from doing this? If this is something I really enjoy, or if that I find happiness or great joy in it, or why would you reprimand me on something just because you don't like it? Yes, okay, we've got to all act within the degrees of law here, but but be yourself, and kind of what Kaylee said, is just be yourself, and let your parents know that's who you are. Because I think a lot of the time your parents think they know who you are, and when you veer in a different direction, they want to kind of reel you in. But if they knew who truly you were, they might help, or they assist you in the direction you want to go. Because a lot of the time they just want to stick to A, B, and C. But a lot of the kids these days, they want to go A, D, G, Z.
Yeah.
Screw you. What's the alphabet? So yeah, I think be yourself, and let your parents see that, and let your parents know that that's who you are. But then it will help them maybe open their eyes and communicate, and guide you in different kind of ways.
Yeah. Well, that was such great advice. Thank you so much. Because if I can say one thing about me being raised in a home that also was not emotionally intelligent, was very much that, just to want to be yourself and express yourself and show your different side, and not be scared to do it. I would have loved to have just been myself, and not being scared to do it, and suppressed parts of me because of the fear of showing that. And then at the age of nearly 50 at the time, going, well, no, now I'm going to be myself. I'm done trying to be somebody else, and it took me to get to nearly 50 before I gave myself permission to be myself, because I had been shut down and suppressed so much. So for me, I'm always saying to parents, don't do that. You want your child to be happy. And if you want your child to be happy, then you need to get to know them. You need to know what makes them happy. expressing themselves, being authentically themselves, and not being fearful to be that way. So thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, Dustin.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, of course.
And I think it's also really important to tell people that, you know, not everyone's going to like you.
Yes.
So be
That's
yourself.
okay.
Yeah, be yourself. It's so important to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Be who you are.
You're
Love
not
who you
like
love.
everybody either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But not everyone's going to like you.
Mm.
And that's okay. That's okay to be like that. And as
Yeah.
long as you are who you are and you trust it, you know, instead of worrying about being liked and being untrue to yourself, because you'll just end up miserable.
Yeah.
And there's no point in that. So
don't be untrue to yourself just for a thumbs up.
In any way, shape, or form, a thumbs up.
That's so true.
Yeah, life.
You've got to live in your own skin. You've got to live with yourself. So instead of trying to adapt yourself to fit in, just be yourself. And don't you find that when you are yourself, that you then, your world opens up, because then suddenly you feel so good about who you are. You start living your life in the way you want to. And then you end up meeting way more people and having a lot more fun and joy when you allow to just be yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and I really hope that this was helpful. You know, we wanted to give you a little bit of an indication what is like from a child's mouth or child's mind, even though my children are grown up, but just looking at, you know, the memories that they had before, when they were young, before I became emotionally intelligent and became obsessed about human behavior, and what that contrast is today, and how it is even filtering down into my little grandchildren's lives, and how they are helping their children now to become emotionally intelligent. And it's never too late to change. It's never too late to become the best possible version of yourself and to help your grown-up children or your young children, your grandchildren, whoever. It's never too late to become emotionally intelligent and to start learning about the people in your life, and start falling in love with your kids and your partner and your grandchildren, because, you know, it really does happen that when you start getting to know each other, it just makes life so much more happy, joyful, content. It's really fulfilling, and it's truly is amazing. It really transforms your life. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you again in the next episode. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Kaylee. And from me, Deborah McPhilemy, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.